Here for just one moment. We're going to wait one more minute to get everybody to come on in. We'll go ahead and get started. So thank you and welcome to the Legal Table. I'm your host, Crystal Jamerson, and I'm the Community Engagement and Outreach Coordinator from Legal Services of Northwest Minnesota. The Legal Table was created to educate you on your rights and responsibilities, along with introduce you to community organizations that have resources to help you along the way. Today's Legal Table, we are here to address education in Minnesota. Um, Education law is crucial because it ensures that individuals understand their rights and responsibilities within our legal system. It also empowers people to navigate legal challenges more effectively and promote a fair and just society where everyone has access to knowledge they need to protect their interests. Presently, we're trying to make sure that people in the counties that we serve are aware of their options and the resources available for its community members. So as you know, the Legal Services of Northwest Minnesota, we serve 22 counties. We have 3 offices in the area where we assist clients in navigating the justice system. And we provide services for low-income individuals with their civil legal needs. Outside of us providing full representation for clients, we have legal kiosks in 87 locations that also provide virtual courts. We assist with legal documents. We have a justice bus, especially in those areas where transportation is limited. And we definitely want to be able to provide legal assistance. We have a lot of new self-help clinics that help with the do-it-yourself type of court forms. So we want to make sure that we have those available for you all. We hope to bring you more information on many civil legal topics throughout the year. So make sure you continue to join us and pass along information to the coworkers and to your clients. With that being said, I want to introduce you to our guest today. We have Sarah Estep. She's from Legal Services of Northwest Minnesota. We have Leticia Hellerud. She's from the Jeremiah program. And we have William Burnside from Rural Minnesota SET. Some real quick things, just a few house rules. Please make sure to put all the questions in the chat and we will go over them at the end of the presentation. Also, this is a quick hour-long meeting, so if you would like some more information, each panelist will have their information listed at the end of the meeting. And this meeting will also be available on the YouTube channel by the end of the week. So if you have coworkers that were just unable to make it, please make sure to let them know that they can check out our channel. This is the first time that we are doing this, but we are applying for our CLE credits for this course. So if you are an attorney and you need a CLE credit, make sure you stay till the end of the end of our broadcast, and we'll make sure to get you in for that CLE credit. And we'll just kind of keep you posted on those as well. So without further ado, I'm going to change and move this over to Sarah Estep, our attorney from Legal Services of Northwest Minnesota.
Thank you, Crystal. Good. As I say, good morning, but more like now it's just technically noon. So hello, everybody. We're going to cover today a variety of the topics for educational law and some various areas there. We can't cover all of them. There are many various different parts, but we'll cover just a few today to go over some of the basics here. And so you let me know if my screen so everybody can see what we are moving through here.
Looks good, Sarah.
Wonderful. Today, what we'll talk about briefly, we'll cover some truancy and school engagement, as well as individual education programs and 504 plans, and then some special considerations or other circumstances that are unique for students that are homeless or unhoused, who are placed in foster care, or who are pregnant or parenting while attending school. And so for truancy and school engagement, there are primarily the state-based laws requiring school attendance. And a continuing truant is a student who's been identified by the school for having been absent for 3 or more days unexcused. Generally, there's also a requirement that the students will then receive a letter to their home, to their parent or guardian about their educational attendance and their failure to attend on 3 or more days absent excuse. There are very limited excuses for being absent from school that are set forth in the legislature and in our rules and our laws. There are also tricky areas that get to be some points of contention when looking through school policies, because each school sets their own handbook, their own policies. And so absences can be a matter that come through that are dealt with by the county generally. Your county attorney's office is going to be the one that's going to prosecute or deal with educational neglect and truancy. But you can have a lot of disagreement between even the schools within the district as to what counts as an excused absence or an unexcused absence based on their school policies, which may be different than the law. Habitual truancy then is the basis for a child protection intervention. That is once a student has hit 7 days of absences. There's a unique little hiccup too in the way that the law has been written. There's differences for those components as it relates to elementary age children versus those who are in middle school, junior high, and high school. So with the 3 or more days of an unexcused absence creating a continuing truant situation, habitual truancy can be 7 days for just one period or more. And so sometimes you'll find yourself with a student who's been absent, if they're skipping first period every day and their parents don't know, you can get a letter coming from the school that's identified them as a habitual truant, and they're hitting these grounds for this intervention before they've even technically become a continuing truant by the law. There's also a longer day of absences for requirements for elementary students, which a lot of schools are now trying to work to implement interventions earlier, because the students who are identified as missing school in those elementary portions of their education, that is then going to become a pattern that can be put into place. And by the time that they are 12 or older, when they're the ones who are going to be subject to that truancy petition, it's a behavior now that's become a pattern for them. And so there's a lot of interventions that are starting earlier in the elementary area when possible. So in Minnesota, you are required to attend school from age 7 to 17. There are some specific exceptions or exemptions, but they are very detailed and require additional notices. If you're homeschooling, you have requirements to contact and communicate with the superintendent of your school district. But generally, if you are age 7 to 17, there's compulsory education, required education in the state of Minnesota for attendance at each period on each day that instruction is offered. As we mentioned earlier, there are limited excused absences. Those are generally for illness, particular religious exemptions, as well as notices to the school being provided early. But a lot of times what we will encounter previously in my work as a child protection truancy prosecutor is that there are students and families who have a lack of resources, and those lack of resources are then impacting their ability to attend school because they are working. And so they're working during those educational hours. They are watching siblings or other family members who are ill or need required care when their parent or guardian is out working to provide for the family. And so we'd find situations where it's not necessarily a lack of desire to be at school, it's a lack of ability to be there due to resources or other family needs. And so work to provide some resources there to bridge those gaps and allow the student to be where they're required to be, so that that student and the family don't deal with any additional impacts later. It was a focus for a lot of those truancy programs that we're seeing being implemented now within the last 5 to 10 years in Minnesota. Specific requirements are also put into place within the law to disenroll before 17. So you can, by the time you reach 17, you can decide to withdraw from school, but that requires meetings with the parents and the school to provide the final information as to alternative arrangements that could be made and to get written agreement to have that unenrollment take place. And so sometimes students will think, well, when they're 17, they're just going to stop going. You can still be subject to the requirement for the compulsory attendance. Oftentimes, schools and communities will set up increasing consequences to help try to resolve issues that are in place before true interventions need to be made by social services or the county. And so school interventions are regularly what we see first, those notices that are required by law, as well as meetings with the family, trying to get the student and the family to come in and review attendance, any issues that are going on, identify any hurdles that are taking place or issues that could be provided from the student and the school to coordinate those things. Sometimes it's as simple as changing the schedule for a class. If a student is enrolled in a course with a situation where there's bullying from another student or a past history, sometimes we have students who'd been assaulted. And so coordinating to make sure that the students can be separated, provided their education, and not feeling unsafe or insecure in that setting is all that that takes. Otherwise, there are also family interventions where if a family can identify a need that's preventing the student to attend, generally transportation or work arrangements, coordinating with other family members and community services to make sure that the student can get their rides to and from school, to engage in after school care or find a way to have students clothes washed sometimes if there's families with needs for services and just hygiene and healthcare. There are voluntary services that the county can provide through social services, as well as Salvation Army and other community resources. And a lot of places are including now county truancy intervention programs through the schools or the county to implement and facilitate these meetings with families and students ahead of time, rather than the first time a family hears about these attendance issues being a contact at their home by a social worker from the county. Instead, having meetings and facilitating general group and informational meetings to provide them details about their requirements to get their children to school and what counts as an attendance, excused absence versus unexcused. Should the continuation of absences occur, there's often then a voluntary child protection case management. So child protection becomes involved and works with the family, trying to provide services on a more detailed and significant basis. And if there's still no remedy, oftentimes a child protection case can then be brought to the courts. In Minnesota, if you're under 11, you would be petitioning against the parents for educational neglect. It's presumed that the child is not the basis or the reason for their lack of attendance. It's a petition that's brought against the parents. But if you are 12 or older, you as the student are the one who is the subject of the petition. And so the student then is the one to come in to provide their admission to the court and work directly as the party that the court is addressing. So various approaches to assist in engaging students and families to try to remedy attendance issues are set out. A lot of work was done in Otter Tail County, where I'm living recently, to create those early interventions in a systematic way to avoid that county intervention or the court implications for families. And so the first primary focus within those schools is to create relationship opportunities for students to connect specifically with staff and supports. Finding one individual that student knows is excited to see them every day, that they're excited to go and talk to. So just creating and connecting students within the school. Oftentimes there are many, many students who are engaged in various activities. They have a lot of participation in groups and organizations, but there are students who are lacking resources and lacking connection, and just having a focused effort by the school and administration to create those connections for students has been huge in reducing absenteeism. Also providing information to students, families, and schools about the requirements and the alternatives there that are available. Sometimes families and students don't understand that skipping after lunch for a week or two is going to land them in court potentially. And so just providing the education to the family to allow them to understand what's required can clear up a lot of differences there and help within the family dynamic, understanding why parents or guardians are requiring things of students. You can also then communicate and facilitate those relationships that the school has with personnel at the school, clear up if there are boundaries and hurdles about access to email or phone, or how the communications are being relayed to one another. And then also coordinating those community resources to provide and support the families who need additional resources through the schools. Like we said, laundry, breakfast, before or after school care, providing that information and getting that out there, and letting them know that there are those supports to help them be successful. Oftentimes there are concerns about student with special needs and getting what they need. And so individualized education plans in Minnesota, IEPs, are written documents that are developed, reviewed, and revised at meetings according to state and federal laws, regulations, and rules. And those are for special education or other services that a student with a disability receives from the school district at no cost. These can be very, very helpful in situations that are identified then where a student's lack of attendance is because they are not getting what they need to work through all of their school day. And so there are federal regulations, state laws, and administrative rules that providing the structure for IEPs in Minnesota. Primarily the Individuals with Disability Education Act, the IDEA Act, special education and special programs through Minnesota's statutes 125A, as well as Chapter 3525 for the children with disabilities under the Minnesota rules. And so those are what lay out the foundations and the requirements for IEPs, which can be very technical. And there are a lot of specific requirements that go into IEP planning and provision and coordination. And so those are primarily focused for children who have been evaluated as meeting the needs for special education. And that can include children that are homeless, incarcerated, hospitalized, or presently in institutional placement. And so there's a variety of considerations that the school can take into account under the statutory basis there to qualify a student. For an IEP meeting, that must be held initially within the first 30 calendar days after a child is determined to be eligible for special education and related services. And so there's a quick time frame and turnaround on that. And then thereafter, they need to conduct annual meetings and reviews so that there's a plan that's in place at the start of each school year for a student who qualifies. The team for an IEP must include the parent or the student if they're 18 or older, a school representative who's got some special education knowledge and curriculum knowledge, at least one of the special education teachers who would be implementing an IEP, as well as a regular education teacher as well, if that child's participating in both services and instructional methods, and then a person who can interpret those results. And so that's usually a person who's on the team already. You can also invite various additional members. So a child, if it's appropriate, or the child should be included if there's a transition now, a change. A representative from agencies who are participating and paying as well, so mental health services or transitional services. And those members need to be, the required members must be there, or you can request a change for that meeting and reset it. They have to have an approval in writing to be excused. And including a child when that is appropriate and when they're capable of participating is very helpful, so they can understand the options available, what can and can't be included, but also to get them in there to self-advocate. IEPs generally consider students' strengths and a parent's concerns about the child's education, the student's most recent evaluation, as well as progress reports for academic, developmental, and functional needs of the student and any other special factors. They include summaries of what the evaluation and academic functionality and working within the school is presently at, as well as goals, because with an IEP, those annual meetings are to review progress towards the goals and determine whether or not that IEP is still needed. And various performance areas included are set out there about social and emotional status, sensory status, general intelligence, motor abilities, functional skills, communication, health. It's not just academic performance. There are a lot of things that IEPs are built around to create supports for the student. Some of the common concerns that are seen or addressed are ensuring that a school is holding the meetings regularly, that they're conducted appropriately, that measurable goals are set out as opposed to general goals that are going to be difficult to measure progress. Clear start and end dates and frequency of the services. So they need to be clear about how often, how regular, and what capacity those services are going to be provided and for what length of time, and where they'll be provided. Some are in school, some are within the classroom, some are separate from the classroom, and some are at home. And so those need to be detailed and provided there, as well as accommodations and adaptations for instruction and assignments. Some of the resources that can be very beneficial related to IEPs are the special education department of the school district. Oftentimes you can have a liaison there as well. The PACER Center is a very helpful resource for students and families who are having difficulty coordinating with their school. Department of Education in Minnesota and the U.S. Department of Education have a lot of resources available, as well as Children's Hospital of Minnesota. IEPs are a little bit different than 504 plans. A lot of times people may think they're interchangeable, but the 504 plan is under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and that is separate. That's related to protection for a student who's got an impairment that's limiting one or more of their major life activities. And so with an IEP being a service plan, a 504 is more of an accommodation plan. Special education and or regular education can take place with the IEP, but 504 is based for regular classroom settings. Parent approval and involvement is not required as it is in an IEP. It is, of course, encouraged, but the school can put implementations into place for a 504 if a parent isn't participating. Also, there's specific certain disability standards for IEPs that are not quite as stringent or the same when looking at a 504. And so really we're looking at a physical or mental impairment that's impacting the student's learning, but it can be much more broad and it doesn't require a special education designation. 504 plans can and should have meetings as well. And so if even such things as a serious injury or an illness that doesn't necessarily qualify to receive special education takes place, but it is impacting a student's ability to succeed academically, 504s can be implemented there where a principal or the advisor is set up to coordinate that meeting then. And it should include the parents if they're willing to participate, as well as the principal, classroom teachers for the students, and then any other school personnel that would be appropriate, depending on the circumstances, sometimes a school nurse if it's a primary health issue, guidance counselors, psychologists, social workers if there's mental health or behavioral components as well. And then reviewing those plans annually as well to see what's changed or been modified there where the student may or may not need that any longer. Some of the common issues there then are that the rights of the disabled students in private schools are not the same as public schools because private schools receive their funding in a much different manner. They may not necessarily be required to engage in providing the same services that public schools with the federal and state funding are. And so oftentimes a student who's in a private school may have far less accommodations provided. Students with IEPs can receive 504 provisions and supplementation as well, but not the other direction around. To qualify for an IEP, you need to meet all of the specific standards. And school officials and parents may not disagree or may not agree about one, if the child's even eligible for a 504, but also even the details of that 504. And so there are resources for a student or parent who want to change or address the school directly, working with children's again, the Department of Education, Children's Minnesota, Groves Learning Organization has information. And again, PACER is a fabulous resource for parents and students who are having difficulty coordinating services or getting more information about what services can, should, or could be provided to their student. There are also, like we talked about just briefly here, students with other special considerations that can take place at any time within their education. We have homeless and unhoused youth, students who are in foster care, as well as pregnant students or parenting students. And so for our homeless and unhoused youth, the inability of resources can really impact their ability to be present and engaged in their education. Additional barriers also include registering. If they're not living with their family members and if they're living on their own, they have their own special considerations if they've not been emancipated. And if they have the base resource difficulties of having sustainable and regular housing, they also may have difficulty in maintaining regular communication with the school, completing and returning documentation that would be required for registration or verifications, getting to and from school. Their location may be changing pretty regularly by frequent relocations. That can disrupt their ability to be in connection with school staff and resources as well. With the students that you have homeless or unhoused concerns for, there are some wonderful pieces of legislation that were enacted that can help to provide protections for these students. So the McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Act, that was in 2001, it requires schools to remove barriers to enrollment to attend and to provide success for these students. It does require the provision of transportation that will allow a student to remain in their school of origin. And so if a student is homeless or unhoused, they can activate or go in under this McKinney-Vento Act and require schools to provide transport so that they can keep going to the school that they were in, even if they are located in a shelter that's outside of that school district or that provision area. Additionally, there's automatic qualifications for nutrition assistance can be very, very helpful because, again, being sheltered, being fed, and being rested are critical components before any sort of educational success can take place. And so making sure that enrolling in that free and reduced lunch program gets taken care of by the school right away also helps support the students that are dealing with the same concerns there. Some of the resources, if you have students that are unhoused or homeless, looking through Schoolhouse Connection that's a primary resource to help schools implement their McKinney-Vento implementations and to get their information, get the schools informed about what their obligations are for homeless students. Sometimes the administration may not be so familiar, and so giving them a resource or being able to walk them through the expectations can be beneficial for your student or your client that you're representing. Additionally, the Department of Education has the Education for Homeless Children and Youth programming, as well as the National Center for Homeless Education Assistance Center for the technical assistance and implementation there. So they can have some fabulous resources about ensuring that the students who are dealing with homelessness can get the education that they're required to receive and entitled to receive, as well as the National Association for the Education of Homeless Children and Youth, another great advocacy org that can get specific resources laid out for students. Youth in foster care are another subset of students that often have educational impacts that they deal with. A lot of times there's a change in status of their legal custodians and decision makers. If a student's placed into the care of a local agency, then they have a social worker who is technically for that period of time their legal custodian. And dependent upon the concerns that place them into foster care, the parents may or may not have a participation role. There's a lot of transition and relocation that takes place. Even in cases where a student is reintegrated into their home and reunified with their family, there's a period of time where they're in foster care, whether a foster family setting or a facility setting. There's a period of time where they're in a trial home placement, so they're back with their home of removal with their parent, but still their parent is not necessarily their legal custodian. And so there's a lot of confusion that can take place during that period of time. There are also various services that are often implemented for families and students that are participating in foster care placement that can also change their availability to attend school, to participate in things. Oftentimes families have additional needs for mental health services or medical services, educational components that take place outside of school based on the specific needs of the family. And so creating that understanding and coordination with schools to ensure that students who are in foster care placements and participating in things like the Strong Teens programs or transitional placements, as well as medical appointments that they may not have ever had before, aren't going to be dealing with school educational enrollment issues or attendance issues related to those provisions of services, as well as consideration being given to keeping a student enrolled in their district when possible. Oftentimes, the way that placements take priority consideration is that placement with a relative is what is most often sought. However, depending upon location, if that requires a re-enrollment of a student in a brand new location and only for a brief period of time, there are protections that are put in place to try to ensure that a student's life is disrupted as little as possible when that disruption of removal from the home takes place. Some of those resources and protections come from the Fostering Connections to Success and Increasing Adoptions Act of 2008, as well as the Every Student Succeeds Act in 2015. And those, again, require written transportation agreements with the school, and those can be verified through the Minnesota Department of Ed then. So social workers need to work with the school that the child was initially enrolled in to coordinate transport when appropriate and possible. Provision of transport to that original school district if they are placed outside of their school district. So avoiding any of the issues about open enrollment and being denied the ability to go to the school you've been going to when you were removed from your home. If that's in the child's best interest, sometimes a change of schools is what's deemed appropriate. But additionally, the Fostering Independence Higher Education Grants, these are new. or newer anyway. And these, you'll sometimes hear them referred to as FIG. But this is a great opportunity for students who were previously engaged in foster care. And so if they're under 27, if they're a Minnesota resident and they've been in the foster care system at any point after turning 13 or adopted at that point, it provides grants to cover attendance in any eligible Minnesota public university or participating private college. And so that is a newer grant opportunity for students who want to continue their education, but may have had some disruptions due to their foster care status and placement. And then lastly, just a bit on pregnant students or parenting students. That can be a great disruption as well. They face additional challenges about school attendance and participation. Again, there may be some different provisions for private schools versus public schools with those fundings and requirements. But for students that are in public schools, there are a lot of protections that are put into place because there are additional appointments, responsibilities that impact a student's ability then to parent, to see their doctor, to maintain their appointments if they are hospitalized, or if they're caring for a newborn, the lack of sleep, the change of schedule, things can greatly impact their ability to be present at school during the regular traditional educational hours, including sometimes that now the student is also looking at the need to work to support themselves and the new child as well. And so getting supports and involvement through school is very important. School and schedule modifications aren't always necessarily widely available, depending upon the school, their familiarity with their requirements, or how they may have addressed situations in the past, if they've had situations of pregnant or parenting students. And in students, they may not be, these opportunities may not be known to the students and the families or the social services supports in the area. Some of the policies and resources there include Title IX. That requires students to allow a student to remain enrolled in their classes and in their extracurricular activities if they are pregnant. They cannot be discriminated against. They also allow for, this act also allows for students to choose if they participate in special programming or classes for pregnant students. And so if those are offered and available, the student can decide whether or not to participate. They can't be required to be transitioned into a separate educational stream if they choose to stay in their mainstream regular programming. It also creates a specific exclusion and an excused absence for attending pregnancy appointments, prenatal appointments, the delivery and childbirth. So long as there's a medical necessity that the doctor's verified, those absences can't be counted against a student when looking at continuing truancy, habitual truancy, suspension from school. So you can be disenrolled from school if you've not attended for 15 consecutive days. Because of the way that the funding's received by schools, they must disenroll a student who hasn't attended for 15 days unexcused. So these types of protections help keep that student on the roster, school funding for that student, but as well prevents that student from dealing with truancy issues or child protection issues thereafter, just for absences related to their childbirth. Minnesota Expectant and Parenting Student Program is also available that helps with coordinated case managers to support students and communities that have specifically high levels of needs. Under this programming, there are a lot of services that have been set up primarily in, I believe, the metro area that provide for additional assistance and coordination through those case managers to assist in parent education for students to have that supplemental education about their new parenting role as well. So child development and parenting needs. Also, a lot of times there can be implementation of daycares and supports for childcare within the school or coordinated within there, and transportation as well. Transportation can be a huge factor that impacts their ability to attend school. And alternative and homebound services. So schooling that can be provided in a different way, in a different manner, different location and different timeframes, so that can for a period of time or for conclusion of the student's education can be taken place in an alternative setting if those qualifications are met. And so working with their school district to engage in the alternative learning centers that are available under their certain circumstances to have those modified hours After COVID, particularly, there'd always been some options for online schools available, but now there's a much broader and wider availability. And so working with the students' school district to get them enrolled in a way that's going to allow them to complete their education are part of what the acts will provide there as well. So again, like we said, that's just a brief review of a variety of the areas of educational law. There are, again, many more related to English language learners and their protections, as well as students who have been suspended or expelled, and working through their appeal rights with the school to re-enroll and things like that. There's the area of educational law related to orders for protection and harassment restraining orders for students who have been subject to abuse. But again, this is a very broad topic. And so today we just covered a few of those others. But if you have questions related to that, we can address those at the end.
Thank you so much, Sarah. You had so much information, and I'm sure that there's so many different statutes. I don't know all the legal terminology, but it was amazing. So I'm hoping that everybody gets a chance to look at our YouTube channel afterwards to be able to kind of stop and pause and grab some of that information, because that was huge. You did an amazing job. So thank you. And there are a couple of questions that we do have. We're going to wait to the end because I want to make sure that all the presenters get an opportunity to present today. We have a lot of information in a short amount of time. So thank you again. One of the options that you talked about was about parents and about people having children and wanting to be in education. And that kind of leads us into our next presenter, which is great. So Leticia is from the Jeremiah program. And Leticia, if you want to kind of introduce yourself, talk about your program and such, we would love to have you on today. So thank you.
Thank you, Crystal, and thank you, Sarah. I learned a lot today. I said yes to presenting, but I always love to learn as I do this kind of partnership. My name is Leticia Mizero-Herod, and I'm the Executive Director of Jeremiah Program Fargo-Moorhead. And I'm joining you from my hotel room in East Africa. So we are 7 hours difference. Where I am is 7:30 something, 7:37, p.m. And so when Crystal reached out to say, will you be part of this, table discussion? What is it called?
The legal table, yeah.
Legal table. See, I'm on the
Yes.
vacation mode. So yes, the legal table. My vacation plans were not firmed up yet. But even after they were, finalized, I kept this on my schedule because I believe in the work that legal service is doing. It's our moms at the Jeremiah program, are low income. I was a low income person for many years myself, and really reached out for referrals or just like talking to someone who truly listened. So I believe in the work of legal service, and I was not going to back out. So thank you for being with me with the background and how it doesn't look so professional. Jeremiah program is, and I have some notes I'm going to be reading. I don't have a PowerPoint because I was not sure about the internet capacity where I was going to be. So please bear with me as I read some of my notes, and sometimes I look down. So Jeremiah program is a national organization with a mission to disrupt the cycle of poverty for single mothers and their children 2 generations at a time. We believe that when we invest in mothers, when we invest simultaneously in a mother's personal and professional goals and the education of her children, she can reauthor her family's narratives and outcomes and act as a change agent in our community. Jeremiah program is one of the nation's most successful strategies for disrupting the cycle of poverty 2 generations at a time. And we also believe that a mother should not have to choose between the impossible choice of investing in herself or taking care of her family. At JP, like we like to call our program for short, single moms can do both. We were founded 26 years ago in Minneapolis, and that's where our headquarters are. And we have 9 cities, as I may mentioned earlier. Like we are present in 9 cities: Minneapolis, St. Paul, Rochester, Fargo, Moorhead, Austin, Baltimore, Las Vegas, Boston, and Brooklyn. And to be a JP mom, you have to be at least 18 years of age, so that you can sign a lease or do some of the legal work that you need to do as a responsible adult. Have a child, at least one child be under the age of 5 or be pregnant. And also be enrolled in college or have a commitment to join college like within 6 months of being enrolled at JP. You also have to meet with a coach, family coach, twice a month, and attend a 12 weeks prerequisite empowerment and leadership course, and have at least 50% custody of her children. We have a holistic approach that's anchored on 5 pillars. 1, affordable and safe housing, quality early childhood education in our on-site child development center. I talked about the 12 weeks ENL, Empowerment Leadership course, one-on-one coaching, and then a community of supportive sisterhood. So we don't have education services per se for our moms or community members. We do partner with different organizations to provide supportive services to the moms based on the needs. Sometimes we have people who come on site and provide a course, sometimes one-on-one, like financial literacy one-on-one, or different, like for a small group. But most of the time we do refer to different organizations that are specialized in the field that the mom would like to be expanding on. I think that's what I have for you. I welcome all questions, but that's all I had for you tonight.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yeah, I absolutely love the Jeremiah program. One of the things that I loved about the Jeremiah program is a single mom is able to get education. So many times, myself being a single mom, it feels like you have to choose between work and then getting the kids everywhere, and then you're putting yourself last. At least in my point, that's kind of what I've seen. But in order to grow your family, you do need that education. Education is something that no one can take away from you. They can take everything else from you, but your education. So the fact that your organization provides that home, they have that daycare, they have the facility that you can live in, so that the parent doesn't have to make the choice between, okay, oh gosh, should I pay my daycare bill or should I pay my rent bill? You guys give them a really great environment so that they can choose education and then get out of the program and then do better for their children. So I'm just so happy that you're able to join us. And we do have some questions for you at the end. We are going to move on to Bill Burnside, and he is from rural Minnesota, SEP. And they also have some different alternative education programs and such. So I'm going to give it to you, Bill. Take it away.
Thank you, Chris. Again, my name is Bill Burnside. I work at the Moorhead office of rural Minnesota SEP. And just so everybody knows, CEP, the SEP portion, stands for Concentrated Employment Program. We are an employment and training agency. We serve 20 counties in northwestern Minnesota, and we have offices in Detroit Lakes, Alexandria, Fergus Falls, here in Moorhead, and then we are also in Wadena, Bemidji, Brainerd, and Little Falls. So we have a good coverage area of northwestern Minnesota. In each of our physical offices, we house the career force offices. Those are run by the state of Minnesota. They're state of Minnesota assets. We have computers, printers, copiers, fax capability. Anybody can come into our office and use those for whatever they need to do. The majority of what they're used for is job search purposes. All the computers obviously have internet, so that folks can get on job search, do the things they need to do. When someone just comes into the office, they are considered what we call a universal customer. And we also have some workshops available that would be available for universal customers. We offer an objective assessment, which helps people to identify their interests, so that, if you have a job that you like, that's very helpful. We also have a career planning workshop that really goes over labor market information. If someone is thinking about college or some sort of training, you want to go into something where there's a demand. And then we can just help with straight up job search. We do have folks help with resumes, cover letters. We have professionals in here that can really give people pointers and just with the latest information on how to do those things. We also have just state programs, state and federal programs, and a couple of the 2-year programs that we have going on right now. One of them is called Drive for 5. It's assistance in paying for jobs in what they call caring professions, in the trades, in manufacturing, and in technology. If someone meets the eligibility requirements, which are quite liberal, so pretty much everybody meets the eligibility requirements. If you're going into one of those professions, there would be money available to help pay for your schooling or your training. Another one of the 2-year programs we have going on right now is called Pathways to Prosperity. It's a P2P program. It's called Next Step. This is for, again, folks looking to do things like CDL, CNA, welding. We have a couple people in barber school. But again, these programs have money available to help pay for training in these job categories. The third one that we have going on right now, we're more than halfway through the 2-year portion of it, it's called the Reentry Grant. That's for people who are justice involved. If you're incarcerated currently and you're within 6 months of getting out, or you've just gotten out, there is, again, money available for counseling, case management, job search assistance. And we really do spend a lot of money on people going to CDL, welding. We have a number of people in welding training right now, just in-demand jobs, and they're very good jobs. So those are a couple of the 2-year grant programs we have going on. The number one or the biggest program that we administer in our 20 counties is what's called MFIP. It's an acronym for the Minnesota Family Investment Program. That's available in all counties in Minnesota. And if you are a family that meets income requirements and you have a child under the age of 18 or are pregnant, you would be eligible for this program. And the way the MFIP program works is the county, they do all of the money, but if you're in the program, it's a 60-month program. And if you're in the program, every month you get a cash disbursement, you get a food disbursement, and a lot of people get a housing grant. And again, that's a monthly stipend that the family gets depending on family size. And I would say that is the biggest program that we run in the counties in Minnesota. And we do the employment and training portion of that. The county handles the money, we handle the employment and training. Again, we can send people to colleges. We have funds available for college tuition. We have funds available for any kind of training that you want to do to improve your life and your family. If you're in the program, it is available. I can just tell you in Clay County currently, we have about 400 families in the program. It's very nice to see, as a former MFIP job counselor, it's very nice to see someone come to you with hopes and dreams, and then you help fund that, and they make too much money to be on the program. So that's very gratifying. We also have several other programs. We have a Senior American program for people who are 55 plus. We have what's called a Youth Build program. That's a federal program for youth who are very much at risk of dropping out of high school. That's a 16-year-old plus program, so you have to be at least 16. We have the Minnesota Youth. That's a 14 to 24. Again, it's to help with education and training. And I will tell you, in all of these programs, we also have funds available for what we call supportive services. If someone has a vehicle and they're trying to get to work and they can't get to work, we have funds available to help fix that vehicle. If you don't have car insurance, we can help with a certain amount of time of car insurance so that you can get back and forth to work. Some of the other programs, state dislocated worker, if you've lost your job due to no fault of your own, you would be eligible for that program. Again, there's money to help with supportive services. There's money to help with training, retraining, things like that. A couple more programs, the Youth at Work, that's a 16 to 24-year-old program. Again, income-based. There is an in-school and an out-of-school youth. Obviously, you have to be in school or out of school. Again, income-based. And all of these, like I said before, have money available for training. I think that's about it. We are an employment and training agency, and if you are looking for more information, just type rmcep.com and it'll bring up our homepage, and you can link into any one of the 8 centers and find out, if our services are available to you.
Thank you so much, Bill. I just want to the Rural Minnesota SEP is amazing. I myself used to be a job counselor. I was an MFIB job counselor, and I worked there for many years. And the thing that I found most rewarding, especially with education, is the opportunities of having any type of education paid for. It was just crazy. I thought, gosh, if I was an MFIB client myself, I think I'd go back to school and get something different. They do great work. They handle a lot of different stressful cases, and it's definitely a team and it's a family there. So if you do have individuals, clients that are looking to get ahead, looking to get back onto their feet, please make sure to reach out to Rural Minnesota SEP. They're an amazing program. They have programs that you probably wouldn't even think of that maybe Bill didn't even talk about. So please, please, please reach out. They're great. Thank you guys, all of the presenters today. I have just a few questions for you guys because I want to try to make sure to keep us all on schedule. I know that we only have a couple minutes. We might run like a minute or two over, so I do apologize. The first question really quick that I have is to Sarah from LSNM. And I was wondering, now back in Ohio, if we were under the age of 18 and we were out of school, walking around, going to the grocery store or something, we could be detained by the police officers and brought back to school. Is there any type of law or anything like that you can think of in our area that is like that? Do we have that?
So in Minnesota, law enforcement can plays a hold on a child even. And so if they find a student there, but oftentimes if there's a concern about a juvenile being a runaway or a truant, then they can take that student to their family or to the hold facility if needed, dependent upon that situation. So there are certain things like that. There's also, each municipality or city may have their own provisions too about curfews and restrictions for when youth can and can't be out unattended and for what purpose, things like that. So there are specific provisions. I don't know that too often we're scooping folks in and engaging them that way if it's not necessary, but there are provisions that will allow law enforcement to take a child into custody if needed, but really generally it's more of a communication and coordination to return them to parent or return them to school, dependent upon their circumstances.
No, thank you for that. I just wanted to know, especially if you're dealing with truancy, that might be something to think about. A question for Leticia. So does your organization help to pay for college at all? Is there any type of grant that while they are enrolled in your program, they would get any type of scholarship or discount? Is there anything that you guys do or have an advisor, like financial advisor, to help them with college?
Before I answer that question, Crystal, do you mind if I share that we do have moms who live in the building you described so beautifully, where we have fully furnished apartments, 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. And the same building has also the Child Development Center on the first floor. But we also do have off-campus, what we call off-campus moms who live in the community if they already have safe and affordable housing in place. We can expand the reach of our support because they can still access other services without necessarily living in the building. So that's a newish component that is a result actually after COVID or during COVID, when we realized that actually we can do coaching on virtually and be successful, and many other things. We can offer some supportive sisterhood events even virtually. We prefer in person now, even the coaching, but we can really double. We have been doubling the numbers of moms that we support every year since then, rethinking our model. Okay, so question, do we provide scholarships? We don't. Like the Jeremiah program doesn't per se. However, we build strong relationships with the higher institutions where the moms are to make sure that they have access to anything that they would qualify for. Our family services team works with case managers in the deans of student affairs offices in the local universities or colleges. We also do have partnerships with groups like PEO. I'm not even sure what it is in full words, but it's like a group of organizations of women supporting women worldwide, and really mostly in education. And we do have some donors who choose to invest in our program by giving scholarships to moms at JP. It's easier to manage when we direct them to NDSU, MSU, M-State and say, just donate there, but just designate it to JP moms. And sometimes really the scholarships or financial aid is not the biggest barrier. Sometimes even navigating, how do I go to school? How do I balance motherhood, work, and education? That's like a way truly like helping them navigate those complicated systems. That's where we come in handy, I think, as an organization. Good question.
No. Thank you so much. And Bill, we have a quick question, very quick. How does somebody apply for the programs outside of MFIB? Because we know MFIB is through the state, but how does somebody apply for services? If you're able to give that to us, that would be great.
Sure, you would communicate with a worker in your area. So any of the cities that I mentioned, either go in or that's probably the easiest way is to go in. Folks will let you know, the worker will let you know what the eligibility criteria is. You have to provide a little information, But they'll determine you eligible or not, and then you go from there. If you are eligible, there's an application process, and again, you go from there.
That's perfect. No, thank you so much. I want to thank all of the presenters. I just have a little bit of information really quick. I just wanted to make sure that I shared to you guys. So our next meeting is going to be September 17th. Just kind of wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. So if you definitely want to join in on the legal table, you can join us on Facebook or Twitter. You can just find us there, see when the next who the next presenters will be. I always like to make that a surprise. Also, just a reminder of the different services that we have. If you do need any of those services, feel free to give me a call. You can email me, or you can use the QR code right now. If you just want to schedule an appointment with me, feel free to click on the screen so that you'll be able to get that information. Then also here is the presenters information. We want to make sure that everybody has that. And other than that, please make sure to check your YouTube channel for this broadcast to be rebroadcast and all of our other legal table shows. We want to say thank you, thank you, thank you so much to everybody. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out. All righty, we're gonna let everybody go. And if you do have any questions, like I said, the information's there. If it's not correct, please make sure to correct it in the chat. Thanks, everybody. Have a
Bye.
great